In this tutorial series, we'll learn about a new pattern for developing your app. So from previous tutorial series, we have only a single button for computation. As soon as you trigger the button there, it's going to execute just one block of code of the button click method registered for your on click attributes. In this new tutorial series, we're going to learn about a more general pattern for you, which will create more exciting app. Namely, we're going to have multiple buttons in your app where we're going to have a single object to be shared among the buttons. So we're going to have a very simple example for this tutorial to illustrate how you can do it. Namely, we're going to do a counter class which will create a counter object. And the counter object is going to have some integer value which may have some lower bound and has some upper bound. And we can also reset the counter value by different buttons. We can increment, decrement, or reset the counter value. We'll see how we can do that in this short tutorial series. First of all, let's create a project for this tutorial. Okay, let's launch your Android Studio. I'm now simply just using the latest version of Android Studio. However, do remember that when you actually submit your lab solution for work, you must make sure your solution is loaded to the lab machine and lab tablets and make sure they run there. Okay, simply working on your machine is not sufficient. Okay, so I'm going to show you how you can do that. First of all, let's start a new Android Studio project. And then for the application name, let's simply say multiple buttons. Multiple buttons. Okay, and then for the company domain, let's say EECS 1022. And then I can simply just create store your project into any project location you like. Okay, and then we say next, and then next, and then we choose empty activity just to begin with, and then we say next. Okay, and now for activity name, we can call that multiple buttons. Okay, just how you name a particular class. Okay, it's a compound word, and then we say finish. Okay, so once the project is loaded, I'm just going to show you one thing to make sure it is compatible with our lab machine, which is a much older version of Android Studio at the moment. Okay, let me just close the tips over here. Now I want you to look at the layout file. In case you're not using a lab machine or a virtual machine, this is something you have to make sure once your project is built. We want to make sure the layout for your XML is not constraint layout. Constraint layout is not supported by older version of Android Studio, for example, the ones that's run in the lab. We want to make sure it runs the relative layout. Okay, how can we make sure? So this activity underscore multiple underscore buttons.xml, it should be open by default. Okay, if you cannot find it, you can just if you cannot see that open on the tab already, you can go to under app, under resource, and also under layout. So you can see this XML file over here. Okay, you can see that by default, this XML file has a constraint layout under component tree over here. Okay, this is not going to be run on your lab machine, so we have to change it just in the beginning. Make sure you do this step if you're using your own machine, using your own version of Android Studio. So we go to the text over here, the texture view. The way we change it very easy, you can see that over here, the second line over here, you can see the tag name over here is simply constraint layout. Okay, we just gotta change that. So as soon as you change this opening tag name over here, it's going to change the matching ending tag name as well. So you don't have to change that one manually as well. You can just change the opening one. Okay, so let's try that. Basically, I want you to be very careful with this step. So you have to select only this up to constraint layout, and then delete that. And now let's type. Along the way, the Android Studio should show you some completion, but we're gonna say Android dot widgets dot relative layout. You can see that. Okay, just type that. In case your Android Studio is kind of slow, doesn't show you the code completion, you can just type this out. Android dot widgets dot relative layout. Basically, this is the thing that we replaced. Okay, make sure you save it. Now let's go back to the design view over here. You can see now under component tree, we now do have relative layout. Okay. Let's make it even simpler. Let's not even worry about the default text view with Hello World over here, because we're going to change that to multiple buttons for this particular project. Okay, so we have set up the projects, and in the next video, we're going to show you how you can gradually build the view, the controller, and the model.